December 1976. The Memphis sun had just dipped low, turning the brick walls of St. Mary's Orphanage deep red. Elvis Presley sat in his Cadillac, a folded letter in his hands. Inside, a dozen children waited unaware that the man they'd only heard on the radio was about to walk through their door. Before we go inside that orphanage, make sure you watch until the end, because what Elvis left behind that day would change more than just a song. The envelope wasn't fan mail. It wasn't typed. It was wrinkled at the edges, as if someone had carried it around for days before mailing it. The afternoon light slanted through the tall windows of Graceland's den, throwing gold across the carpet. Elvis paced slowly, turning the small white envelope over and over in his hand. He slid a finger under the flap and unfolded a single sheet of lined notebook paper. The pencil strokes were careful, but slightly uneven letters pressed, so hard they'd left grooves in the page. Dear Mr. Elvis, we listen to your songs on the radio every day. Some kids here don't have moms or dads, but we all know your songs. Could you come sing for us at Christmas? He read it twice, then a third time. The faint scent of pencil, lead, and school. Paper rose from the page. The words felt small on the paper, but heavy in his chest. He glanced toward the phone on the side table, then back to the letter. Some kids here don't have mums or dads. His pacing stopped. The decision was made before the thought had even finished forming. He reached for the receiver. The line clicked, and his manager's voice came through. Clear the afternoon, Elvis said. I'm going out. There was a pause. Where to? You'll see, he replied, hanging up before the question could be pressed. 15 minutes later, a black Cadillac eased down the long driveway, through the gates of Graceland, past the winter bare trees, and toward downtown Memphis. He didn't call the press, didn't tell the fan club. This wasn't a concert. It was something else. As the car turned onto the quieter streets near the Mississippi River, Elvis rested the letter on his knee. His eyes kept returning to that one line. The Cadillac rolled to a stop at a red light. Outside, a street vendor's cart hissed with roasting peanuts. The smell drifted into the car. A woman at the corner glanced through the window, did a double take, and smiled. Elvis nodded back, but his mind was already at St. Mary's. According to one of his close aides, Elvis kept that letter tucked into his jacket pocket for the entire drive. He didn't fold it away. By the time the orphanage's brick facade came into view, the winter sun was low and the shadows were long. The Cadillac slowed, then stopped at the curb. He took a breath, slid the letter into his inside pocket, and reached for the door handle. The engine went silent. Elvis stepped out into the cold December air. Where he was going, no cameras would follow. The Cadillac's door swung open, and the sharp bite of winter air hit his face. The quiet street was lined with bare trees, their branches tangled against a fading sky. The building ahead, 2 stories of painted bricks, stood with the stillness of a place that had seen decades pass without much changing. From behind the frost-speckled windows, small faces appeared, breath fogging the glass dot inside. The sound of quick footsteps echoed down a narrow hallway. On the front steps, a nun in a grey habit waited. Her hands were clasped tightly, and her eyes were wide, as if she wasn't quite convinced the man before her was real. Mr. Presley, she said softly. He smiled, his breath curling into the cold air. Afternoon, sister. The wooden steps creaked under his boots as he climbed them. When the door swung open, warmth rushed out, bringing with it the faint smells of chalk dust, fresh bread, and pine from the modest Christmas tree in the corner of the lobby. The The hallway was narrow, its walls lined with drawings tacked up on faded corkboards, snowmen, candy canes, a few crooked guitars in crayon. Halfway down the hall, a piece of cardboard leaned against the wall. On it, in bright marker and clumsy letters, "Welcome, Elvis." Stars and hearts filled the edges. He stopped, resting a hand on it for a moment. Then he turned to see them. A dozen children stood bunched together in the next room, some half hidden behind the doorframe. A boy maybe 7 clutched a paper guitar he'd cut out from an old cereal box. The edges were bent from holding it too tight. Elvis stepped into the doorway, his tall frame filling it. He took off his sunglasses, tucking them into his jacket. "Well, now," he said gently, "is this my welcoming committee?" The boy with the paper guitar nodded without looking up. Elvis knelt, lowering himself so they were eye to eye. "That's a fine guitar you've got there," he said. "Mind if I borrow it later?" The boy's mouth twitched into the smallest grin. Behind them, the nun's voice broke the moment. "We set up the living room," she said, almost apologetically. "It's not much." "That's perfect," Elvis replied before she could finish. He followed her down another hallway. The floorboards groaned under their steps. Every so often, a child peeked from a doorway and darted away giggling at the end of the hall. The door to the living room stood open. Inside, mismatched chairs formed a loose circle around a small coffee table. A thin Christmas tree stood in the corner, decorated with paper ornaments and strands of popcorn. A few wrapped shoeboxes sat beneath it, gifts from the local church. Elvis scanned the room, his eyes landing on an old acoustic guitar leaning against the wall. He walked over, picked it up, and gave the strings a quick strum. The sound was a little flat, but warm. The children began to filter in, taking seats on the rug and chairs. A boy in the back pulled his knees to his chest, rocking slightly, eyes fixed on Elvis's hands. He sat down in the chair at the center of the room, resting the guitar on his knee. The nun stepped aside. The children waited. It wasn't the welcome that brought tears, it was the song he was about to sing next. Elvis didn't take the armchair the nun had quietly placed in the corner for him. Instead, he pulled a chair right into the center of the room. The children leaned forward instinctively, some on elbows, others cross-legged on the rug. The guitar rested easily in his lap, the wood worn smooth at the edges from years of playing dot. No spotlight, no stage, just the soft creak of the chair and the faint smell of pine from the Christmas tree. He strummed once, adjusting the tuning with a careful twist of the pegs. The notes settled into the air, filling the room with that warm, unmistakable hum. Without introduction, his voice began, "Love me tender, love me sweet." It was slower than the record, softer. Each word carried a weight that made the room still. A girl in the front row, tiny, with a blue ribbon in her hair, leaned against a pillow on the floor, her eyes locked on his. She didn't blink much, afraid to miss anything. Halfway through the song, Elvis glanced at her and gave a small nod. She smiled back, clutching the pillow tighter. He sang to all of them, but in moments, it felt like he was singing to each one individually. When the last note faded, the children clapped, not the roaring applause of a stadium, but a warm, scattered sound that filled the space between them. "All right," he said with a grin. "I think I've got something for you." From around his neck, he pulled off a white scarf and walked it over to a boy in a wheelchair near the back. Kneeling beside him, Elvis draped the scarf into his hands. "You keep this safe, buddy." The boy's fingers curled into the fabric. He whispered something too quiet for anyone else to hear, and Elvis gave his hand a squeeze. He returned to his chair, strummed the guitar once more, and looked over the group. "Now, I know it's Christmas," he said, "and there's one song I can't leave without hearing you all sing with me." The nun tilted her head, curious. "Silent Night," Elvis said. "You start it, I'll follow." The first few voices were small, almost shy, but then more joined in, until the whole room was singing, children, staff. Even Elvis, his deep baritone rolled beneath their lighter voices, blending into something that made the space feel warmer than the old radiator ever could. By the second verse, the boy with the paper guitar was holding it up like he was playing along. The girl with the blue ribbon mouthed every word without looking away from Elvis. The final note hung in the air for a moment before drifting away. Nobody spoke right away. The stillness felt sacred. Then came the sound of footsteps in the hall. A nun stepped into the doorway, her hands clasped around a plain white envelope. She looked at Elvis. "This came for you." He set the guitar down and took the envelope, the paper cool against his palm. It was smaller than the first letter, the corners bent as if it had been handled too much. No return addressed, just his name in careful, uneven letters. The children watched as he slid a finger under the flap. He unfolded the page inside. His eyes moved slowly over the words. The smile faded, replaced by something quieter. He looked up at the nun who'd brought it. "Who wrote this?" he asked. "She couldn't be here today," the nun said gently. "She's in the hospital." Elvis glanced down again at the last line, his thumb pressing into the paper. Her wish was simple: to hear Elvis in person just once. He stood, scarf still in his hand. "Where is she?" he asked. And with that, the room knew he wasn't finished yet. Elvis didn't sit back down. The chair behind him might as well have disappeared. The white envelope felt thin, as if it held only a few sentences. But those sentences had already stopped him mid-breath. The handwriting was careful but wobbly, each letter rounded, like someone learning to write neatly. "Dear Mr. Elvis, I couldn't come to see you today because I am in the hospital. My wish is to hear you sing in person just once. Love, Mary." The Y in her name trailed off like the pencil had slipped. Elvis held the paper a moment longer, then folded it gently and slid it into his jacket pocket. He turned toward the nun. "Where is she?" "Methodist Children's Hospital," she said. "It's only a few minutes away, but visiting hours are." "I don't care about visiting hours," he said quietly. The children in the room shifted, sensing something different in his tone. A girl whispered to the boy with the paper guitar, who clutched it tighter. Elvis looked back at them and smiled, soft, reassuring. "I'll be back," he said, "but I have to go sing for someone who couldn't make it today." Outside, the Cadillac's engine roared to life. The exhaust curled into the cold air as it pulled away from the curb, past the bare trees and small storefronts with twinkling Christmas lights in their windows. Inside the car, Elvis kept his hand in his jacket pocket, fingertips resting on the folded letter. According to one aide, he didn't speak for most of the drives, just watched the city go by. The smell of roasted peanuts from a street cart mixed with the faint leather scent of the Cadillac's seats. When they stopped at a red light, he glanced at the hospital's glowing sign just blocks ahead. The car rolled into the circular driveway of the children's wing. Glass doors slid open to reveal a warm lobby, faintly smelling of antiseptic and pine from a small decorated tree near the reception desk. A nurse at the counter looked up, startled. Then her eyes widened. "Mr. Presley," he tipped his head. Politely, "I'm here to see Mary." But the visit to the hospital didn't just touch one life, started something that would last decades. The hallway smelled faintly of antiseptic and Christmas cookies, an odd mix from the nurses. Break room down the hall. Elvis followed a nurse past blinking monitors and pale green curtains. The floors gleamed under the fluorescent lights, each step of his boots sending a soft echo into the quiet. They stopped at a door near the end. The nurse placed her hand on the handle, then glanced up at him. "She's been asking all week if you'd come." The door opened with a gentle click. Inside, a little girl, no older than 8, lay in a narrow bed. Her cheeks were pale against the white pillowcase. A small brown teddy bear rested in the crook of her arm, its fur worn from years of being held. Eyes went wide. "You're Elvis," she whispered. "That's what they tell me," he said with a smile. Stepping closer, he pulled a chair to her bedside, its legs scraping lightly on the tile. "Now, I hear you've got a Christmas wish," he said. She nodded slowly. "Well," he said, lifting the guitar strap from his shoulder, "I don't break Christmas wishes." The first chord was soft, almost tentative. His voice followed, rich and steady. The song wasn't for the radio or the stage. It was for her alone. Nurses paused in the doorway, leaning against the frame to listen. Mary clutched her teddy bear tighter, her lips moving to match the words. Between verses, Elvis asked, "What's your favorite?" She thought for a moment. "Silent Night." He nodded and began playing, his deep baritone rolling through the quiet room. Her voice joined his small, breathy, but certain. For those few minutes, there was no hospital, no illness, just the sound of two voices weaving together. When the song ended, he leaned forward, resting his forearms on the edge of her bed. "You get better, all right," he said softly. "I'll see you again." From around his neck, he removed his scarf, the same one he'd worn into the orphanage hours earlier, and laid it gently on her pillow. "This is yours now." Mary brushed her fingers over the fabric, as if memorizing how it felt. The nurse's voice was quiet but full. "You just made her whole Christmas." Elvis gave a small nod, then stood, his guitar swinging lightly at his side. As he stepped into the hallway, the fluorescent lights seemed softer somehow. The nurse closed the door behind them, her eyes glistening. Back in the Cadillac, the city lights blurred through the window as they drove away. 1 week later, a package left Graceland, addressed to St. Mary's Orphanage. Inside was something no one expected. The sound of tearing paper echoed through the orphanage's small dining hall. It was just after breakfast when the nun wheeled in a large cardboard box, the shipping label marked in bold, "From Graceland." The children gathered close, their voices overlapping in excitement. One boy climbed onto a chair to see better. The nun pulled at the packing tape until it gave way with a sharp rip. Inside, beneath layers of brown paper, were brand new instruments, 2 guitars, a set of tambourines, and a small electric keyboard. The wood gleamed under the overhead lights. On top of the instruments sat an envelope. She opened it carefully and read aloud, "Every child should have a song to sing. Elvis." Her voice trembled on the last word. The children reached for the instruments, turning them over in their hands, strumming, tapping, testing the sounds, as if each note belonged to them. Now, in the corner, the boy with the paper guitar held his new one like it was made of gold. Across town, in a quiet hospital room, Mary received a smaller box that same morning. Inside, a portable record player and a stack of vinyl, every Elvis album, each one signed on the cover. On top, a note written in blue ink: "For when I can't be there in person, keep singing." Elvis. She placed the first record on the turntable. As the needle dropped, his voice filled the room again. For some, it was a gift for Christmas morning. For others, it was the start of a lifetime. If this story moved you, share it with someone who believes music can change a life. What's the kindest thing you've ever seen a musician do?